Thank you very much. Well, I'm absolutely delighted to be here today and to be talking about the experience-driven marketing approach, which we believe is the way that marketers need to look at the world today in order to best manage their brands. So there's probably, as you realize, been increasing recognition of the importance of experiences. And this is just a short quote out of a Harvard Business Review article, and Keith Weed from Unilever was one of those that was the authors. And of course, we've seen this week his news of his retirement. But some fantastic information here. And in particular, I think what's important is talking about the total experience. It's not just necessarily what we would have seen as being something as going into a branch of a bank or looking at a website, but every single brand encounter that somebody has. And that's why I think Keith is also talking about share of experience becoming the most important metric for the future. That's very much what we think about at Mesh. And the way that we've created our company is to think around how people build brands in their minds. And we love this quote from Jeremy Bullmore, who says, "People build brands like birds build nests from scraps and straws they chance upon." And we think that's everything, whether it's the TV ad, going into the branch, having a chat with somebody, it's every single brand encounter that creates the perception in somebody's mind. But of course, nowadays, we are absolutely awash with data. We've loads of different metrics coming through, and how on earth do we make sense of this? And we think, go back to basics, go back to the initial principles, look through the customer's eyes. And that's what we've got in terms of a data stream that we call real-time experience tracking. And we find that this can really help in terms of illuminating all the other data streams that we now have at our fingertips. So how does this work? Well, we actually have a three-stage approach to this. First of all, we recruit people normally through online panels, and we ask them a short survey about their brand perceptions. Then we use a mobile diary to get people to tell us about all these different brand encounters. So let's say it was retail banks, they'd be telling us about everything from seeing the TV ad to actually using their mobile banking app. At the end of the week, they then do another survey, either online or mobile, which are some of the same questions that we've asked in the first survey, like brand consideration. And what this means is that when we do analytics, we can actually identify which brand encounters or which touch points have impacted on KPIs like, for example, brand consideration or trust. So this might be what it looks like for an individual going through their week. So they do their survey, they tell us their experiences, and then they do their survey at the end of the week. But of course, we have people in the field the whole time during that period. So what has this enabled us to do? Well, we've got a manifesto, and that's what I'm going to be talking through today. And I did this with Professor Hugh Wilson at Cranfield School of Management. So a big thank you to Hugh. But number one on our list was that marketers today need to take responsibility for every brand touch point, even those that may not be the paid media that you don't control. Now, this is a chart that has come using the data that we've talked about, the real-time experience tracking data. And the size of the bubble is representing the percentage of people that have had that experience, that have been reached by that experience. The positioning on the map, so the further to the right, the more positive the experience, and the further up the chart, the more persuasive experience. So what you can see here with soft drinks is that actually the consumption experience is one of the most important experiences. And therefore, when you're thinking about all your paid media, you need to think, how might that be linking to generate experiences with actual consumption? And another piece of work in a different category, so this is now electrical goods, and Cranfield School of Management looked at doing analytics to see what happened if you saw the electrical good in somebody else's home. If you did, you were 3 times as likely to increase your brand consideration and purchase. So that just shows the importance of what we call peer observation, and how many people are really looking and quantifying the numbers of people each week that have peer observation. But clearly it's an important touch point that many marketers are not necessarily looking at. This was an interesting question we had from PepsiCo. They wanted to see which touch point would make people feel closer to the brand. And we did the analytics, and there were 2. The first was TV, and the second was pubs, bars, and restaurants. But what was interesting was that when we looked at the information, Pepsi didn't have a TV ad on. What they had was KFC, with the Pepsi in that end shot. But what we were able to see from this is that, of course, having Pepsi linked to a food occasion was really hardwiring it in people's minds and making them feel closer to the brand. So again, it may be a touch point like that a retailer is providing for your brand that you need to be aware of. Number 2, measure share of experience rather than focusing so much on share of voice. Now, we all know we can draw a pie chart of how much money we're spending in which media, but can we draw that pie chart of how people are experiencing our brand? Think back to that soft drinks early chart. You know, what are the percentage of consumption experiences, or seeing somebody else drink, or going into a store? Well, that's what we really need to understand. And here we have one which is for more than, from the insurance market. And we can see that even in something like TV, actually, that isn't just brand communication. It also involves earned media as well. And we've correlated share of experience with market share. And it has a much stronger correlation than share of voice with market share. So what that means is we would urge marketers to look at share of experience and try and make sure that they have a higher share of experience than their actual market share. We're running a retail banking study, and you can see here some data from March 2018. And on that particular month, Nationwide had the lead in share of experience. And we'll go on in a moment to have a look at what that actually meant. But before we do, let's go on to the third point, which is it's not just quantity, but it's quality that matters. Emotion matters. So you should be insisting on getting engaged reach, not just reaching your customers. Now, just thinking back to the share of experience, what we can see is that although there were a lot of experiences from Nationwide in that particular month, in March, that actually the quality was not as high as it was for Halifax and Lloyd's. And the reason was that there were a lot of TV ads out at that time for Nationwide, and some of them were polarizing. So it's important to have the quality of experience, because a positive experience has 3 times the impact of a neutral one on brand consideration. Here's another example. So Gatorade in Mexico, they felt that it was going to be important to communicate the brand through experiential touch points like gyms, fitness centers, and parks. But they didn't know how to measure the effectiveness of this. So we had a look at this. We did a study, and those bubbles in the light blue are the experiential touch points. And although they're only small, they're only reaching a few people, they were having a disproportionately positive impact on the brand. So we recommended some changes to the media mix, and the team came back 6 months later to say, look how our brand metrics have improved. So from all of this, we've got an experience model. We've talked about share of experience, quantity, and you need to increase that. We've talked about how a positive experience has 3 times the impact of a neutral one. But how can we make sure that we generate more positive experiences? Well, first of all, we know the channel is important. So for example, the same creative seen at the cinema can have a much more positive impact than it does in TV. And in fact, that was something that we did see with Nationwide advertising. We can also make sure that we look at the proposition, so the messaging. And we would know, for example, whether destination messaging or comfort messaging might work best for a client like Delta Airlines. We also know in terms of placement, is it going to be better to have a poster at a tube station, or is it going to be better to have one as a big billboard? And thirdly, context. What time of day is it going to be best to put out your particular communication? And we'll look at that in a moment. So if content is king, context is queen. And let's see what we mean by that. So what we've done here is we've taken data throughout the MESH database, and we've had a look at the reach, so when are people reached during the day, and then we've had a look at engagement. How positively are they feeling about the encounters that they're having with brands? And we've looked at packaged goods here. And what you can see is that reach peaks towards the evening. But interestingly, we were particularly interested to see that in the morning, people were responding very positively. They were in the evening as well. But what was going on in the morning? So we really wanted to have a look at which touch point was driving this. And we went right the way through, and we could see each of the touch points. And actually, we were able to notice that it was TV that was actually driving this touch point positivity. And that was in the morning. It tended to be online in the evening. And when we had a look at the comments that we were seeing from people, actually it's those cheery ads first thing in the morning that are really enhancing our mood and making us feel a bit better. So that's what it is. You want those cheery ads first thing in the morning. That's not the same with service brands like financial services or utilities or travel. And actually what we see here is that positivity increases towards the end of the day. Now, what is it that's driving that? Well, again, we had a look through the different touch points so that we could see what was driving the positivity. And we saw that it was largely out of home. And what was it that was coming through from out of home? It was actually those moments after work at tube stations and train stations where you've got a few moments and you're prepared to take in a message. So you've got time to think and look at that. So that was what was happening there. The fifth part on our experience-driven marketing manifesto is to say that experience is a journey. And the destination isn't just purchase. What we need to think about is customers that are achieving their goals. And I've got some data here that just shows what it was like for one of our clients when we noticed a big change in customer behavior. And this was the percentage of people that were being reached in store. And right back from 2010 to 2011, we saw this halving. And actually what people were doing was using mobile and online much more. So it was completely changing the purchase journey. And therefore we needed to respond to that and make sure that we were positioning ourselves in the online and mobile space. Here's another example. So we've been working with Signoi, and this is taking all our banking data in the UK. Eudaimonia is helping people fulfill their goals. So all the experiences that we've picked up, we've categorized. And here we can see that actually there's a bit of a white space around retail banks because Eudaimonia is a very positive and persuasive touch point. However, there aren't that many experiences going through. So this is an opportunity for retail banks. We can actually see that another type of context, so here RBS, because it had been bailed out by the government, people responded very negatively to the Six Nations sponsorship at some points. Whereas Santander, which had a much more positive brand heritage, people are responding positively when they see the logo. So remember that an empty logo, people are going to put their own views into it. So what's the final point on the Experience-Driven Marketing Manifesto? And this is to say, organize around experiences rather than products, functions, or channels. Frankly, it's much easier to say than it is to do. But I think from this, what's important is that we put the customer at the heart of the organization and we see how we can organize around that. And I know, thinking back to my own days as a marketing manager on pet food, I would never have had a touch point as being in the park or walking the dog. And yet, of course, that's one of the main times that you actually have chats with other dog owners. So let's think differently and put the customer at the heart of what we're doing. We also need to identify internal touch points to make sure that we get our insight through the organization and everyone can benefit from them. So in summary, this is our experience-driven marketing manifesto. Take responsibility for every brand touch point, even those you don't control. Make sure you're measuring your share of experience. Don't just think about quantity, it's quality as well. So insist on engaged reach. Think about turbocharging that through the context, and make sure you're thinking about your customer meeting their goals rather than just a purchase. And if you can, organize around experiences. So with that, I'd just like to thank you all very much indeed for listening, and also a big thank you to Hugh, who kindly helped me put this together. So thank you very much indeed.